Over the years at SailCork, looking at Yachtmaster assessments, there's a common thread that runs through some of the errors that are made. And actually these apply on the water as well. So here's a slightly tongue-in-cheek look at the top 8 rookie mistakes. So number 8, it's mixing up EP or projected EP, which is exactly the same technique, and course to steer. So with EP or projected EP, you do the tidal vector at the start, at the end, whereas course to steer, you do the tidal vector at the start. The other key difference with EP and projected EP, you join the dots, the fixed to the EP, whereas with the course to steer, you join the end of the tidal vector to a 1 hour position along the COG line. Don't connect to the waypoint. I love mistake number 7. Unfortunately, it's still too common, though we've managed to reduce its precedent over the past number of years. I call it the wrong way Corrigan. Those of you who are students of aviation history will know about this guy, Douglas Corrigan. He was an American of Irish descent, obviously with a name like Corrigan, and he filed a flight plan in 1938 to fly from the east coast of America to Ireland, and he was refused. So then he filed a flight plan to go to California and rocked up in Ireland some hours or some many tens of hours later, and he claimed that his compass was 180 degrees out. So he became known as Wrong Way Corrigan, and I love this headline in the North New York Post, printed as a mirror image. And we do have a few Wrong Way Corrigans in our navigation courses, and this is caused by incorrect use of the plotter. So watch with the plotter. My plotter has blue arrows, you might have green or even red arrows, but watch for the big blue arrow, which is the direction of your bearing or your course. It's written on it. And the small blue arrows is your always point north. So just make sure you're consistent with that, and that avoids Wrong Way Corrigan. It's worth doing a little sketch that also prevents a Wrong Way Corrigan. So don't be 180 degrees off course. Number 6 is not that common with yachtmasters, it is more common with the beginners, and that is mixing up the tide tables. So make sure that you're using the correct tidal height table, particularly with secondary ports. Just make sure you read on the page of the almanac which standard port it is. It mightn't be the nearest one in the almanac. You may have to skip a standard port to go back, so don't automatically go backwards or forwards to the nearest tide table. Number 5, somewhat similar, and it's springs and neaps. So neaps in blue, springs in red, but at yachtmaster level you should be looking at the tidal range on the day versus the range shown in the tidal range table in the almanac, or on the top right hand side of where the tidal curve is. You'll see whether it's springs or neaps, and you obviously watch out that the tidal stream atlas has the neaps first and in tenth of a knot, whereas the tidal diamond table has springs first and in knots. Make sure that you interpolate for the mid-range tides, so that if your tidal range on the day is different than mean high water spring or mean high water mean spring range or mean neap range, you're going to have to interpolate. But if your tide range on the day is less than the mean neap range, or more than the mean spring range, so you have a big spring or a small neap, you're going to have to extrapolate. Same technique, but you just stretch out the line further on the extrapolation and in the interpolation of rates table. So springs and neaps. Number 4, which used to be more common, less common now because we've really driven at this one, is use Victoria for tidal streams. The clue is there in the 2 tidal diamond tables on the 2 different charts. It's written Victoria on the top, and on all 13 pages of the tidal stream atlas it's written Victoria at the top. Don't use anything else for tidal streams. So when you're crossing the River Styx on the way to meet your maker, it'll still be Queen Victoria herself controlling the tidal stream. Number 3 is cadet, and unfortunately a number of yachtmasters are still mixing up their variation and deviation, whether to add or subtract. So remember cadet, and it's compass to true, add east. Therefore, when the error is west, you subtract it. West is opposite of east. And then the reverse applies. Then going from true to compass, you subtract east and therefore add west. Go through that to make sure you're not making simple errors, because with a 6-degree variation that can immediately put you 12 degrees out, and you could add deviation could be up to 5 degrees. That could have you 17 degrees out, or more. It could have you 22 degrees out, and that's a pretty serious mistake. That's the mistake that wrecks boats. Most common mistake number 2 is to do with time zones. Now, even at Yachtmaster level, there's some basic mistakes made about forgetting to add the hour for the summer. So the shaded area is winter time, which is UT on some of the tide tables, but it's TZ minus 100 on other tide tables, which is the Southern Peninsula tide tables. Watch that. So check at the top which time zone the tide table is in, and then add an hour for summertime. With Victoria, it's more complex, because if you're working down in the Southern Peninsula, you're going to have add 2 hours for the summer. So you've got the Northern Territories, which are UT in the winter, and DST, which is UT plus 1 in the summer. And Southern Peninsula, which is TZ minus 0100, or Southern Peninsula Standard Time in the winter, which is just simply UT plus 1. And then they shift another hour to the summer, which is Southern Peninsula Daylight Saving Time, which is UT plus 2. Now, the trap here is that the tidal height tables in the Southern Peninsula are TZ minus 100, so therefore converting to the summer you add an hour. But when you're using tidal streams as well, such as in passage planning, you have to add, you're working with Victoria, which is in UT. So when you're moving across to the summer Southern Peninsula with tidal streams from Victoria, you have to add 2 hours. Just be careful you have that worked out clearly. A way to get around it in your head is the prototype for the Northern Territories is the United Kingdom, and the prototype for Southern Peninsula is France. And it might be a bit easier to work it out in your head. And finally, the most common mistake, and it's nothing to do with navigation or the RYA or even SailCork, it's read the question. Read the question, read the question. It's depressingly common. So start with the preamble at the top of the exam. There's 4 or 5 lines setting out exactly what you need to do, such as time zones, variation, and don't make assumptions throughout the exam. Keep referring back to that top 2 or 3 lines. Then with each question, read each question through fully. The way some of the questions are written, essential information actually only appears at the bottom of the question. So make sure you read through each question fully. If there's 4 or 5 parts, just scan through and read the whole question, maybe take some notes before you start, and then go back to start 1 and start. Because you'll find with the order of the questions, they're not necessarily always in the logical order, and particularly some of the passage planning questions, you might find that question 5 could ask you about a departure time, but to get through question 2 within that, you have to work through departure time anyway. And if you've taken your proper notes, knowing that that's going to come up in a later question, it's going to save a load of time. Do take the extra time, read the question, scan through it, take notes, and only start the question once you've read through everything, because that avoids repetitive work or not taking proper notes. A depressingly common problem. Hopefully it's not this year. So just to summarize the rookie mistakes, unfortunately, mistake number 1, totally avoidable, is read the question. Number 2 is time zones. Number 3 is mixing up variation, deviation, whether to add or subtract. Use cadet each time, write it out. Tidal streams, Victoria, 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 Victoria. Remember, Victoria is in UT, so if you're working Southern Peninsula, you may have to add a 2nd hour during the summer. Don't mix your tidal, your springs, your neaps, your mid-range. Make sure you interpolate or extrapolate for mid-range tides. Check that you're using the right tide table, particularly with secondary ports. And one thing with secondary ports, do the conversion to secondary port in UT or in the time of the main tide, the standard port tide table, and only then convert just to local time after that. And then second from final is don't be a wrong way. Corrigan 180 degrees off course. And the least common mistake, thankfully it's slipped down the rankings in recent years, it's mixing up the EP stroke projected EP technique with the course to steer technique. Good luck.